And before the speech happens, they vet the speech. They ask the speaker to send the speech beforehand so that they can vet it and then make the necessary corrections before the speech starts. In this process, when Dr. B.R. Ambedkar sent his speech to this Jat Path or Mandal committee, they read it and they said that we cannot allow you to speak this because it is too revolutionary. In that, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar talks about caste discrimination within the Hindu fold, and then it has some extremely, a form of argument which will, which is not digestible by many of us even today. So the point was in that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar gives a clear-cut this thing regarding caste system. Because he was denied to speak, he publishes it as a book. As a book called The Annihilation of Caste. And later, once this book was published, the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, writes a letter to him because the book is very much critical about Hinduism, about the Hindu religion. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi writes a letter to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and he says that, you can't say such and such things, this is a sweeping interpretation, this is this way, that way. To which he replies again. To which again Gandhi replies. This is a series of letters. I am not taking anybody's side in this line of argument. But the point is, if you read that book, The Annihilation of Caste, along with the letters which Mahatma Gandhi had sent to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, you will realize every single one of you should read that book. Not probably whether you support the point of view of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar or not, that is not the point. But if you read it, you will understand how to argue a point, how to debate the point, how to put across something in a concise manner that there are no ifs and buts to it. And that is exactly how the Constitution of India is. Wordings of the Constitution of India has also been made. There is very little scope as to, assuming that, okay, maybe the Constitution makers intended this or maybe the Constitution makers intended that. That is not the case. So this is one point which I wanted to tell you. If possible, you should all read it. And as a school of social work and as students of criminology, what exactly are you doing these qualities away from India? And even Supreme Court in Keshavananda Bharati judgment has clearly said that the basic principles doctrine cannot be violated, which means that the governments, even if it has brute force majority also, cannot alter the basic nature of the Constitution, even though the power of amendment is there. So this is the thing about our Constitution. And you see the right to vote. I will tell you something like something which Ramchandra Guha had mentioned in his book. And it's a beautiful thing. India at the time of independence had less than 30% literacy, if I remember exactly, somewhere around 20. Less than 30% literacy. It was written with caste. It was written with untouchability. It was written with communalism. We just had come out of partition. Despite all of this, we made a constitution where we ensured that a Dalit and a Brahmin has one vote. We ensured that a dark-skinned person and a fair-skinned person has one vote. We ensured that a woman and a man has one vote. That way, in a single stroke, that was the biggest leveler that India had. And that was the biggest, the most revolutionary act that you would see. Though all these things are on paper, a lot of things we take it for granted, but we should understand the gravity of what has happened. The women's rights movements in the US have protested and done a lot of protests for decades to get the right to vote on par with men. Whereas in India, without any protest, without any such movements for universal adult suffrage, it was provided at the time of the induction of the Constitution, which is a very far-sighted visionary decision. If I always think about this, if at the age of 23, Bhagat Singh laid down his life for the country, fighting against an oppressive British rule, which to somebody like me, I am a civil servant. My authority flows from the Constitution. The definition of All India Services is made in the Constitution, Article 310, 11 and 12. And my independence at work as to the fact that I cannot be removed from my job other than the President of India, who is the appointing authority for IAS and IPS officers, means that the government, the constitution makers intended that I should work in an independent manner and see the longer vision, the longer picture rather than short-term political gains or short-term gains. Now that authority that has been bestowed on me by the constitution has built this brand value for all these IAS, IPS and all these central services, which makes a lot of you want to work in these services as well. So the point is, everything, every aspect of your life is declared and defined by the Constitution. Anything that is not defined in the Constitution, you see how difficult it is to get it done. When many people criticize that the Indian Constitution is a very legal document, in the sense that there are many other constitutions which have broader and vaguer, like the American Constitution, broader and vaguer statements, but they implement it. But in India, being a very diverse country with as much of diversity in ideologies and opinions as much as diversity in individuals, it is best that we leave the least for individuals' interpretations. And this I say as a policeman also, because when I get a law, I know to which extent I can push it and to which extent I may not. And that discretion part, when it comes as ambiguity of law, that helps us in policing at times. That can also be misused. And the same is true about the constitutional values also. So it is a good thing that a lot of things have been declared and explained clearly in no unclear terms as to what the country of India is and what India stands for. Sovereign, socialist was later added, of course. Secular, right? And I'm sure even Nandagopal sir is here. He will also explain a lot of legal intricacies of the Constitution. Rather, I thought I'll tell you what Constitution actually means practically to all of us in our day-to-day lives. For example, today you woke up at your house in the morning and you call it your own house. Your mom, dad, your parents are there in the house. Nobody came in the middle of the night and threw you out of your house. Where is this authority? Where is the authority that you have? Where is the sense of security that you have? That nobody can just randomly come and throw you out of your own house. It comes from the Constitution, from the right to life. Next, you switch on the TV and then you hear a news presenter saying that, the government has been doing such, the government has been doing this, the government has been doing that, such and such leader has been indulging in such and such activities, a lot of criticism of the government as well. But you don't see that press reporter going to jail, because in this country the Constitution has given you freedom of speech, which allows you to criticize even the most powerful authorities that are there in this country. So there came your freedom of speech. And then you decide to come to this college. Maybe you caught a bus, maybe you caught an auto rickshaw. Nobody stopped you in between and said you are not going anywhere today, you go back home. That is your right to move freely, again enshrined in the Constitution. And today you all come here wearing different dresses. I see people wearing churidar, I see people wearing headscarves, I see people wearing a cross, I see people of all communities wearing whatever form of dressing they want. Nobody is forcing anybody else to wear something which they do not want to wear. Other than of course, the code of conduct of the organization, which prevents you from wearing shorts and going to college. That is a different issue. But otherwise, nobody is stopping you from wearing what you want. Again, enshrined in the Constitution, this is your religious freedom as well as part of your right to live with dignity. Wrong things on Indians. If that is a revolution, I would say that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his team of constitutional specialists who made this constitution, every single line is a revolution. Only when, as and when the time comes, as and when the situation comes, as and when you want to express, interpret something, then you realize the significance of that statement. Even for that matter, you see a raging debate of decriminalization of homosexuality, Article 377. Even to justify against the existence of such acts, you always go to the roots, that is the Constitution. There is heavy pollution in Delhi. Supreme Courts are intervening. What rights or what powers do the Supreme Court have to interfere in something which is administrative? Again, the Constitution, the right to live. So, this is the overall thing about the Constitution of India, that even though we don't see it visibly, even though we don't talk about it, but it guides and governs us throughout. And on this occasion, I think it would be only apt if I talk about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar regarding the Constitution. So, what made the drafting committee chairman draft a constitution in such a concise and precise manner, which still stands even after years of different forms of government, and it will still stand for another as long as the nation exists? Why? What is his thought process, and what is something that we can all learn from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the way the constitution is drafted? For this, we have to actually go back to one of those incidents which happened in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's life. In the sense, there is something called as Jat Path Thodak Mandal, which talks about Jat Path means caste discrimination. So every year they used to conduct a conference, or annually. This was before independence. Annually they conduct a conference where they talk about the ill effects of caste and what are the changes that needs to be done about it. So there was this one year where the program was held in Lahore,